I'm Pete Mundo. It's good to be here with you. So let's talk about Gonzaga to the Big 12, shall we? Let's have this conversation. I don't like it. I don't like the prospect of it. I just don't. And I'm a Brett Yormark guy. Believe in Brett, baby. That's my guy. I'm all about it. I'm all about Brett Yormark. I love what he did with the new TV deal with ESPN. And seriously, I think he's going to be a very good and has already been a very good commissioner for this league. But the idea that the Big 12 would go down the road of adding Gonzaga, that scares me. Here's why. You remember the old Big East? Remember that? Big East back in its heyday. Let's go back 10 years ago and maybe more, 10, 15 years ago before, I guess, all the realignment stuff. So we're going back about 15 years. It was a monster basketball league. You think about that league and you think of the old Big East, and you had Georgetown and Syracuse and Villanova and St. John's. The list went on. Notre Dame was in there. West Virginia was in there. It was a monster basketball conference. And it was like kind of a football conference. Some of the teams played football. Some of the teams didn't play football. You had basketball schools. You had football schools. And around we went. And that was a hang-up in the Big East. The Big East, in part, not the reason for it, but in part collapsed because it didn't know what it was. And the teams that realized they could make more money trying to be football schools decided that they were going to bail and they were going to try to be a football school and make more money. And the Big East identity was basketball. The core of it was basketball. It kind of was, in some ways, a football conference, but you had some teams that didn't play football or didn't play FBS football. Some were playing FCS football. Some weren't playing any football. And it made for a weird dynamic. And frankly, I don't want to see the Big 12 go down that road. I don't care that it's Gonzaga. I don't care that Gonzaga has played for national championships twice in the last 5 years. What you need are schools that at least are playing football at the FBS level. I'm not saying they got to be powerhouses, but they got to be playing. And Gonzaga has not had a football team since 1942, and that just creates a weird environment. It just does. And, I thought Bob Huggins put it very well, the West Virginia basketball coach. Here's what Bob Huggins said. Bob Huggins, on reports about Gonzaga talking to the Big 12 about joining the conference, Bob Huggins, the West Virginia coach, said, quote, "I would think it would be a tremendous awakening for Gonzaga to play who we play day after day." And that's exactly right. I know Gonzaga's got a national brand. I understand that. But Gonzaga in the Big 12 is a completely different program. I don't think they're Gonzaga. I know they recruit well. I understand they get guys from all over the world, but they roll through the West Coast Conference every year. They end up as a 1 seed, and they have an easier path as a result of the Final Four. Gonzaga is not a 1 seed year in, year out in the Big 12. It's not. So their pathway to a Final Four, their pathway to a national championship is more difficult, which means it's less likely to happen as often as it's happened the last few years for Mark Few and his team. I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm just being realistic about how difficult this conference is. And then all of a sudden, what do you have? You have you got Gonzaga where, it's a nice story because they're a, nice school up there, cute school up there in the Pacific Northwest. But they got 7,000 people enrolled there. It's not a big school. I don't think it's necessarily a huge fan base. And Spokane, Washington's not exactly around the corner. So I think the allure of Gonzaga and the shine of Gonzaga isn't there anymore if they're in the Big 12. I think that, Brett Yormark at his core is a basketball guy, right? I mean, that's who Brett Yormark is, worked for the Brooklyn Nets, the whole thing. He's a basketball guy. And he's thinking, boy, if I got a conference with Kansas and I got a conference with Gonzaga and I got Baylor, and I've got Houston, and all these schools that are really good basketball programs right now. We've got that national conference. We've got a huge product. Man, oh man, it's gonna be enormous. It's gonna be huge. But I don't think that's the case. And I just don't think that it's worth it to go the basketball route. The basketball route doesn't pay. That's the other thing as well. The basketball route doesn't pay. The Big East is making chump change on a per team basis compared to the Power Five schools. They've got a nice TV deal with Fox Sports, but it's nothing compared to football. I don't think you can go this route, and I think it looks fun on paper, but man, you're telling West Virginia to go to Spokane, Washington on a Tuesday night for a basketball game for a school that's not going to really bring you any juice when it comes to money because it's only a basketball school? I can't justify that. And it's interesting too. I was looking this up. The national championship game a couple of years ago between Baylor and Gonzaga that Baylor ended up winning. The numbers weren't great. It was like 16 million and change. So it wasn't great. Like the championship game this year, UNC Kansas did a better number on cable than the Baylor Gonzaga game did on CBS, on big CBS. And naturally, anytime a game is on big CBS, it's going to do a better number because not as many people have cable because of cord cutting and everything else. So, the idea of people coast to coast tuning into a Gonzaga basketball game, I just don't think that's true. And they don't have a football program. So if you're not guaranteed eyeballs, you're not guaranteed to bring any more money to the table, and you create an awkward situation where they're in the conference, but then they're not playing football, that's three strikes to me. I can't justify that. I can't. Now, obviously, this is just a report. We'll have to see what actually ends up happening here. But I would be very, very leery of this being the route to go. I mean, I think the Big 12 is what it is. And when you talk expansion, you talk bigger state schools that are like-minded, that have football first as their program. And that's what I'd be looking at. I wouldn't get caught up with this whole, well, look at how good Gonzaga's been. And I know that they've got a history. I understand that it predates Mark Few. But you know what? And I'm not trying to be crass here, but if Mark Few falls off a building tomorrow, what is Gonzaga? I mean, yes, they're going to have good players, but are they the Gonzaga we think of them today? That's how you've got to think of conference expansion. That's why I would bring back Colorado. I know they're one of the worst football programs in America right now, but to me, it's not about how good you are. It's a bigger conversation than that. Pete Mundo, HeartlandCollegeSports.com. It's so great to be here with you. We appreciate you guys joining us on YouTube Live. Appreciate you being here on the podcast, on Facebook. Hey, if you're on the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and we'll get you that free Heartland College Sports koozie in the mail when you send me a screenshot of your rating and review to Pete Mundo, Mundo, at HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Yeah, seeing some of your comments here, Zaga is a really bad idea. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit at all right now. So you guys have a great night, and we'll be talking to you soon, and enjoy the games on Saturday. Take care.